Now, welcome back. Rob Dawson of ESPN is with us on the line. Hi, Rob.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks for the time. So it's quite something, isn't it? Manchester United's first permanent manager unveiled since Jose Mourinho.
Well, no, we've had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in between.
He wasn't hired as permanent, though. Permanent, here to stay.
Well, he was. I mean, he was caretaker initially, wasn't he? And then we had a big unveiling when he was appointed permanent manager. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's...
You'd heard him interviewed before as Manchester United manager is more than
I mean, it is a different situation. We hadn't heard him talk about the Man United job. He was appointed, or the announcement came a few weeks ago, but he was focused on Ajax. He had a title to win in Holland and didn't want to give any interviews, didn't even do MUTV, which is rare, really, when they appoint a new manager. So, yeah, Monday was the first chance to really get to hear from him, both on club channels and in a press conference. And it was interesting. It was great to sit in front of him for the first time and hear what he had to say.
What was your overall sense of him as a person?
I was impressed. To be honest, I thought he handled it quite well. I mean, it can be very daunting walking into a room of reporters that you don't know. Obviously, he's conducting the press conference in a language that's not his primary language, obviously, which is difficult for anyone. But I thought he was very self-assured. He didn't dodge any questions. He answered everything. It came across that he had a plan of what he wants to change, what he wants to do at Man United. He didn't divulge too many details about that. He was very keen to sort of suggest that plan is for him right now, and that we would learn as he goes along what that is. I thought he handled it very well. I think most United fans, from the reaction I've seen, have been quite impressed by what they saw on Monday.
On the self-assured point, he was even asked about Ronaldo, and then there was a follow-up question, and he certainly wasn't so intimidated by this room of journalists that he wasn't afraid to say, well, I'm going to talk to Ronaldo about that before you. and he had a couple of moments like that, started a few sentences with, as I've already said.
Yeah, quite. I mean, and that's, he's well within his rights to do that. I mean, he did get asked a couple of difficult questions. The Ronaldo one is going to be a big issue. He was asked about Ralf Rangnick, about that consultancy. And instead of kind of, just playing along a little bit, he said, well, that's a decision that the club have made. He kind of distanced himself a little bit from that Rangnick consultancy. He was asked about Louis van Gaal, obviously someone that he admires quite a lot, having coached in Holland. Van Gaal had said that if he had advised Ten Hag, he would advise him to take a different job. But Ten Hag took that question head on and was very clear that, while he took Louis van Gaal's advice and he appreciated that time that he gave him, that the phrase he used was that he would draw his own line, essentially that he would do it his own way, that he's listened to the opinions of other people, but he made his own mind up. He took the decision to take the job on his own, and he's confident in that. And I think that's great. He's going to need that when he finally gets to see the players and starts taking training and starts getting used to these matches, because it is a big job. It's a huge job that awaits him at Old Trafford, and he will need to put his own stamp on it.
What is your sense of Ralf Rangnick's standing at the club?
I thought it was very telling yesterday that Ten Hag seemed to distance himself from that. A lot of United fans will have appreciated Ralf Rangnick being very honest in his press conferences. I think a lot of United fans have listened to him and thought that people have needed to say these kind of things for years now. About the deficiencies behind the scenes and also on the field. I just thought it was interesting that he was asked directly yesterday, would he like to work with Rangnick? Is it something that he was looking forward to? And his simple answer was, that's for the club. Yeah. There was no beating around the bush with that. It was simply that it was a club decision to appoint him as a consultant. But ultimately, going forward, the decisions will be made by Ten Hag. He will be the one that bears the brunt of the criticism if those decisions go wrong, and should get the praise if those goes right. So, it's only right that he stands up and says that the buck stops with me.
Yeah, I think it's become very apparent very early that the Ralf Rangnick 2-year consultancy business is just yet another odd Manchester United decision that's not going to be followed through on.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, it was odd at the time. We were told initially that while United were quite keen on Ralf Rangnick, that he had kind of distanced himself a little bit from the caretaker job because he had a job in Moscow that he was quite enjoying. It was only when this 2-year consultancy became an issue that Rangnick then signed on. It was obviously the tipping point for him to take the job initially anyway. As time has gone on, if Rangnick had got great results, then you could understand why United would want to keep him around. But it hasn't gone well. The experiment or whatever it was hasn't gone well, and results haven't improved. And it's been a disaster really from a coaching standpoint. And it leaves the new manager, whoever it was, if it was Pochettino or Ten Hag or anyone, in a very difficult position in that you've got a manager who has coached the team and is then going to move up upstairs and make these decisions or help make decisions or even just consult on decisions. It leaves a very, very awkward dynamic. And I think it says everything really that United don't seem particularly bothered that Rangnick has gone and taken that Austria job, because if they really wanted him on board, consulting for them on a regular basis, you wouldn't let that guy go and take a national team manager's job, because that takes enough time as it is.
Rob, you said he was asked about Ronaldo. His answer there was pretty clear cut.
Yeah, and again, it's one of the key issues because it's Ronaldo. He was asked directly, was Ronaldo part of his plans? And he said yes. And he was asked again, what do you think he could bring? And he said goals, which, seems fairly obvious. But it was a talking point because the football that Ten Hag wants to play, might not necessarily suit what you get from Ronaldo. And Ralf Rangnick has touched on that a little bit himself. But ultimately, there's so many deficiencies in that squad that you look at a guy like Ronaldo who's actually delivering what he says he can do, scoring goals, and you can't really take him out. There are so many other problems with that squad that I think for now Ten Hag probably thinks that you just leave that well alone and deal with that later. Do we have any sense, does Ten Hag have a big budget to work with this summer? I don't think it's overly massive. It'll be around the same as United have operated with for the last few years. They tend to work to a plan of around about 100 million, 150 million net spend. Obviously, it will change depending on who is able to be sold. Ralf Rangnick said a couple of weeks ago after the Liverpool game that he thought that they could do with about 10 new players. Well, since then, United behind the scenes have distanced themselves from that and said, the likelihood of these massive changes is quite unlikely. Usually every summer they work to a plan of bringing in 3 new players and letting 3 go. Now, that may change this summer because you've got a lot of players who are out of contract, the likes of Pogba, Lingard, Matic has already said that he's leaving. So there may be 1 or 2 more than the 3 that we're used to, but it certainly won't be a huge overhaul of 10 players in, 10 players out. And again, it won't be a £500 million spend because United just aren't capable of doing that. There is money to spend on new players, but it certainly won't be this huge overhaul where we see almost an entirely new squad arrive at Old Trafford in the summer. The next point comes with the massive acknowledgement that talking to the press is not an especially relevant aspect to how Manchester United are going to do under Ten Hag. And actually, Ralf Rangnick, I thought, was a very good media performer. Maybe it was in some respects the best aspect of his tenure. Every time he spoke, you thought, God, he's spoken very well there and very commanding and likeable. Ten Hag, I wouldn't say brought that presence as such, and I think part of the problem is he's not speaking in his first language for sure. I brought this up because I was listening to Danny Murphy this morning, or the other morning with Jim White and Sam Jordan, and he was sort of saying, he was giving the impression like players will watch this and it was pretty underwhelming if you compare it to some of the big name arrivals like a Klopp or all the way back to Mourinho and very commanding press conferences. So just for people who haven't heard the Ten Hag press conference, here for instance, you think this is big unveiling, and this is literally the first question he's asked, and here's his answer within, and I might chat to you about it afterwards. So here's the opening question of the Ten Hag press conference.
You've been preparing for this job for a week or so now in England. You were at the Crystal Palace match yesterday. What are your first thoughts on what you're taking on, and what areas have you pinpointed that need improvement?
I make analyze, and I think we are in the lead of the process now with this start. Before season starts, we have now a couple of weeks of break. I make analyze, I observe, and I will set, of course, conclusions. But I keep it now for myself. It's in the previous season, and we have to go to next season. So it's not Klopp. It's not a call to arms as such. I don't, and that's not going to define him necessarily. But I think that has jumped out to people. Rob, where were you on that front?
Yeah, I mean, we were well aware that before he arrived, that his English wasn't as developed, I suppose, as the likes of Rangnick or a Klopp or a Guardiola. I think it's important to say that you've played the first answer there. By the end of the press conference, he did feel a little bit more comfortable with his English. The answers did get slightly longer. He seemed a little bit more relaxed.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think obviously United will hope that his English improves, as the job goes on, and it should do, living in the country and dealing with these players every day. And you said there that does it really matter that that in the way that he speaks to the press, probably not. I guess the only issue there is if communication with his players becomes an issue. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why he's brought Steve McClaren in. He's obviously someone that he knows very well from their time together in Holland, and he is a good communicator. Obviously, he is an English speaker. It's his first language. It's a little bit different for him. So I'm sure that will help. But, it's such early days. You can't really make judgments on that kind of thing. I can understand why some of the fans may look at that and go, well, that's a little bit underwhelming. But, this is the first question to his first press conference. I think if we're having the conversation maybe in a year's time, then perhaps it's a bit more of an issue. But we'll just have to see how that goes.
Results dictate everything. This is
exactly.
a complete irrelevance if things go well, and if things go badly, it'll be pointed to. McClaren is probably a very good choice in that respect. Good communicator and will be a good go-between, actually. Yeah, that in some respects explains the McClaren choice a touch more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important role. Obviously they know each other very well. They will trust each other. Communication is a massive part of football. Whether it's on the touchline or in the dressing room, and Steve will help with that. Also, the mood of the dressing room at the moment is absolutely on the floor. There are divisions between players. The mood has been described as toxic. And Steve is such a likeable character that I think there's a lot of people at Old Trafford that really think that he will be able to help in that respect. He's a go-between between the players and Erik Ten Hag. He'll be the one that the players come to if there are issues, or if there's something that Erik needs to tell the players, that he will be the one to deliver that message. And I think it's quite a smart appointment. Obviously some people will look at that and go, we're trying to recreate the days of Fergie because he was an assistant in the treble year and stuff. But I don't think it's anything to do with that. I think it's quite a smart appointment really on the club's behalf and also on Erik Ten Hag's behalf.
Rob, I'm sure you are getting all different kinds of versions of what's going on in that dressing room, working this beat on a regular basis. You mentioned there the divisions between the players. Is there a particular issue or fault line on which the division or divisions are based on, or what is going on in there?
No, I don't think there's anything particular that you could point to. I think it's a symptom of a club and a team that have not played well. These divisions don't exist when the team are winning week in, week out. When you're losing and when you've had a season as poor as Man United, fingers start to be pointed. There's blame passed around. There are people unhappy that they're not playing and maybe have fallen down the pecking order behind players that they don't believe should be playing every week. It's a very slippery slope when results are not going well, and this season has been shocking really from very early on, and it's just snowballed. It cost Ole Gunnar Solskjaer his job. Ralf Rangnick came in, and it hasn't improved. These things tend to rectify themselves if things are going well. A couple of good results, a good summer with a new manager, a manager that they trust and believe in his plan, and a good start to the season. We'll see all that disappear. I think the main problem is it's just been a shocking season for everyone, really.
Well, listen, I hope for your sake it improves. It was an interesting season last year. A defeat to Crystal Palace was such a fitting finale in many respects. Rob Dawson, Manchester United correspondent for ESPN. Thanks so much, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Rob Dawson there. And our football show coverage brought to you by Sky. Watch every UEFA Champions League and Europa League match live in BT Sport this season.